Ben was lying awake one night thinking about money. Pretty standard situation. On his feed, one person was posting vacation photos, another had just bought a brand new car, and someone else was showing off their perfect life again. Then Ben looked at his bank account and thought, is everyone really doing this well? Or is everyone just incredibly good at pretending? And that's when Ben realized something. Most people have no idea what normal actually looks like financially. Some people think everybody around them is investing, building wealth, and calmly preparing for retirement. Other people think the whole world is living paycheck to paycheck and just acting like everything is under control. The truth, as usual, is somewhere in the middle. And honestly, parts of it are pretty brutal. If you look at the average full-time worker, the median income is about $1,000 a week. Over a year, that comes out to roughly $52,000 before taxes. At first, that sounds decent, but Ben figured out pretty quickly that before taxes and what actually hits your account are two very different stories. Once all the deductions come out, that number starts looking a whole lot smaller, and suddenly, the average income doesn't feel like a ticket to a stress-free life anymore. But what matters even more than how much people earn is what they do with what they earn. And this is where things get interesting. The average retirement savings balance is around $65,000. Not exactly inspiring, but that's not even the worst part. About 1 out of every 4 people doesn't have a retirement account at all. Zero. No retirement savings, no backup plan, no cushion for the future. The strategy is basically, I'll deal with it later. To Ben, that always sounded like jumping off a branch without knowing whether there's another one underneath. In the jungle, that plan does not age well, and if you break it down by age, it's still not a pretty picture. Younger people tend to have very little saved, which is understandable. Older people usually have more, but not nearly enough to relax. Among older adults, the average retirement balance is around $88,000. That's the part that really made Ben raise an eyebrow, because if you try to live off that money carefully, it gives you about $3,500 a year. That's less than $300 a month. $300 a month in retirement. Even if the house is paid off, that still doesn't go far. Groceries, medication, bills, basic life stuff, none of that disappears. Ben may look sharp in a suit, but even he knows you're not living on that. You're surviving at best. A lot of people are also counting on government benefits. On average, that's about $1,550 a month, or roughly $18,600 a year. Better than nothing, sure, but it's still a long way from comfortable. And remember, that's just the average. Some people get less. That's why Ben looks at those benefits as a nice extra, not the entire retirement plan. Building your whole future around that is way too risky. Now let's talk about everyday life. The average household spends around $5,577 a month. Over a year, that's about $67,000. And this is where Ben got especially interested, because if a household is spending that much, then just to break even, they need to bring home at least that much. Not before taxes, after taxes. Real money in the account. The biggest expense is housing. On average, that's about $1,885 a month. Over a year, that's more than $22,000 just to keep a roof over your head. Then food comes in at about $691 a month. Transportation adds another $913. And right there, Ben understood why so many people feel drained, not just mentally, but financially too. Money usually doesn't disappear because of one giant disaster. More often, it leaks out through a bunch of normal expenses that don't seem dangerous on their own. And now for one of the ugliest parts of the whole picture, credit card debt. The average household carries more than $9,000 in credit card debt. And this isn't a mortgage. It's not a business investment. It's not an asset that might grow in value over time. Most of it went to stuff people already bought, forgot about, broke, or shoved in a closet somewhere. They may not remember where the money went, but the interest definitely does. If that debt is costing around 20% a year, that's about $1,800 just in interest, just for the privilege of being in debt. Ben has always thought that was a bizarre deal. First you buy something you can't really afford, then you pay extra for it on top of that. Very human behavior. At least monkeys don't finance bananas. Now, to be fair, the average credit score is actually pretty solid, around 715. That means a lot of people are at least paying their bills on time and not completely burying themselves. But averages can be misleading. Plenty of people have bad credit and then act shocked when they get offered terrible loan terms or get denied altogether. The basic logic here is simple. Pay on time. Don't max out your credit cards and stop opening new accounts every time a cashier offers a tiny discount. Now let's get to the number that probably matters most. Net worth. That's everything a person owns minus everything they owe. Cash, investments, property, minus debt. And honestly, it's one of the best ways to tell how someone is really doing financially. The average household net worth is around $122,000. For younger people, it's usually very low. Then it starts climbing. Roughly $91,000 for people in their mid-30s to mid-40s, then around $168,000 after that, and higher in later years. At first glance, those numbers don't sound terrible, but Ben made an important observation here. You do not need magic to hit them. You do not need to be a market genius. You do not need to build a billion-dollar startup. You need to do something boring, consistent, and effective. Spend less than you make, and invest the difference regularly. And this is where the real problem shows up. The average person saves only about 6% of their after-tax income. 6%. When Ben heard that, he actually adjusted his tie, because 6% is not much if you still have a car to buy, a move coming up, repairs to pay for, a future home down payment, and an actual retirement to fund. Over the long run, that just isn't enough. That's why the whole picture looks so strange. People say they want financial freedom. They say they want less stress. They say they want to retire comfortably, but their behavior often says the opposite. Spending is high, saving is low, debt is expensive, investing is either tiny or non-existent. The good news is that beating average is not nearly as hard as it sounds. Honestly, the bar is pretty low. If Ben saves more than 6% of his income, he's already ahead of a lot of people. If Ben isn't dragging around credit card debt, he's already in a stronger position. If Ben invests consistently and doesn't build his entire future around government benefits, he's already setting himself up for something much better. So what would Ben actually do? First, he'd figure out his real spending. Honestly, no excuses. Then, he'd knock out high-interest debt, because that's priority number one. After that, he'd automate monthly transfers into savings and investments. And one more thing, Ben wouldn't try to look rich. Ben would try to actually become rich. That's really the big takeaway here. The average person is not doing as well financially as it may seem, and that's not a reason to panic. It's a reason to understand one simple truth. If Ben wants a life that's better than average, he does not need to be extraordinary. He just needs to stop making average mistakes for too long. Ben isn't perfect. Ben has messed up too. Ben used to think small expenses didn't matter, but eventually, he realized something important. A cage doesn't always look like a cage. Sometimes it looks like monthly payments, impulse purchases, and the phrase, "I'll start later." So Ben's choice is pretty simple. Live like everyone else and hope it somehow works out. Or live a little smarter and build some real margin. And honestly, Ben likes the second option a lot more. He already looks good in a suit, but he looks even better knowing there's real money behind it. If this video helped, hit the like button. Subscribe to Ben so you don't miss the next breakdown. See you in the next video.